Welcome back to our journey through the fascinating world of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime's Light Novel. Let's continue from the last part, where we left.
When Laplace told everyone about Clayman's death, they couldn't believe it. Footmen didn't want to believe it was true, but the sad look on Laplace's face made it clear. They all felt weak and scared without Clayman, and they started to think about what to do next. Laplace acted like it wasn't a big deal, which made Footmen angry, but Kazalem stopped them from fighting. They all knew they had lost something important and needed to be smart about their next move. They talked it over and decided to stay quiet for a while and think things through, knowing that rushing could make things worse. They still wanted to reach their goals and used their spies and friends in high places to help. The boys suggested they should wait and watch what Rimuru does next before they try to get back at him. Laplace liked this idea because it meant no more dangerous work for now, and even Footmen agreed they had to be careful. Feeling stronger together, they stepped back from the limelight, getting ready for when they'd be able to fight against Rimuru again. Back to the Demon Lords. After they chose the name Octogram, two maids named Maiziri and Rain, who worked for Guy Crimson, made a great meal for everyone. They wore red and were really good cooks. Some people stayed to eat and others just talked after the meeting. Rimuru loved the food and even learned some recipes on the sly. They talked about fixing up the city and other personal stuff. Ramirez tried to convince Rimuru to let her move to his town, but he said no. During the meal, Rimuru shared some special brandy from Tempest which helped everyone get along. Then he went back home to Tempest, happy to see it doing well. He found that everyone there was doing their jobs well because Veldora had kept them up to date. Even though Veldora can be a bit of a trickster, Rimuru was glad for the news. After that, Rimuru took a break in a hot spring and listened to what Diablo had to say. Diablo was on his way to Farmus with two important people, Rahim and Raisin. The first thing he did was heal them because Xian had hurt them a lot. They looked really bad, but Diablo fixed them up. While they were traveling, Diablo thought about what would happen to them. Rahim and Raisin were thankful for being healed and asked Diablo to help their king too. They were scared but hoped Diablo would be kind. Diablo found their loyalty interesting and warned them to stay loyal or else. He agreed to help with a scary smile, and they promised to follow him no matter what. They didn't know that Diablo was secretly making sure they'd listen to him with his special skills. Back in Farmus, everyone was shocked when they see their king, Edmurus, turned into a weird cube of flesh. It was a big mess, and Raisin, who was pretending to be someone else, tried to stay calm while everyone was asking questions. A few days later, Raisin and Rahim came back to the castle with bad news. When they saw the king looking so strange, they tried to use magic to fix him, but nothing worked. Realizing how bad things were, Raisin, following Diablo's orders, started to tell a story that gave everyone a little bit of hope. Yom and his friends walked into the throne room with Imjurin, Grukasith, and Rommel. Diablo came in too, dressed up fancy and looking a bit out of place. Yom tried to talk all proper like a noble, but he kept slipping into street language which made some of the ministers frown. Raisin stepped in, worried, and told everyone that Yom's group had saved them and could even heal the king. The nobles weren't sure what to think at first, but Raisin and Rahim backed up the story. They talked about how Rimuru had stopped the storm dragon, and the nobles realized they had been wrong to make Rimuru's country an enemy. They decided it was best to make peace. Diablo, speaking for Rimuru, gave the king a potion that made him better and then laid out some tough terms for peace. He told Farmus they had 1 week to agree or else. Some people weren't happy about it, but Diablo left them with a warning to not waste time. After Diablo left, King Edmurus knew they had to figure things out fast. He only had 3 days to call all the nobles together. His helpers got busy setting up for the big meeting. The king, feeling worn out but knowing he had to be strong, talked with his closest advisors. They all agreed they had to move quickly to keep things from getting worse. The next day, they all met again. King Edmurus told them how serious the threat was, and everyone listened really carefully. They argued a bit about what to do. Some were scared of what might happen if they said no to the enemy, and others were worried about what would happen to their country. King Edmurus felt the pressure, knowing any mistake could be really bad. But as they talked, it became clear that the best thing to do was to try for peace, even if it meant they had to give up some things. Back in the village, Diablo came back with a big smile. He said he had scared the others by showing them something special. Rimuru was surprised and wondered if Diablo had really used that scary thing. Thinking about it, Rimuru knew it was something only a demon lord would do. They talked about the big amount of money they asked for, which was a lot for the world they lived in. Diablo was sure that Farmus would agree to what they wanted. They even thought about starting a civil war in Farmus to securing allies. Rimuru agreed with Diablo's ideas and let him take care of it. While Rimuru was going over the plans, Haruna came in with some sweets. Veldora, who was really into his comic books, came over to have some too. Diablo gave Veldora some dessert, and he was happy to get it. Rimuru saw that Diablo didn't eat any, but Diablo said he had already had some before. When Veldora suddenly had to leave, Rimuru made sure he didn't bother anyone else. Diablo told Rimuru he had done all his work and was ready to help him with anything. Rimuru thought about going to the peace talks himself but decided Diablo could handle it on his own. Diablo guessed right about how things would go. In the big meeting, the king told everyone they lost to the storm dragon and said they should agree to what Tempest wanted for peace. This made the nobles very upset because they thought paying 10,000 stellars was crazy. Diablo got why they were upset, but he also knew they didn't really understand how serious the threat was. The nobles argued a lot. Some of them even wanted to keep fighting the war, not seeing how weak Farmus was. In all the noise, a noble named Edward said he didn't like the king's plan. But in the end, the king decided to step down and let Edward take over. This calmed things down a bit, but people were still tense because Farmus was getting a lot of attention from other countries and there were fights about who should be in charge. Even with all this trouble, Farmus ended up making peace with Tempest. They signed a paper saying they wouldn't fight and agreed that Tempest was strong. This peace was a bit shaky, but it was what Rimuru wanted, and Diablo saw it coming. The day after Diablo gave his update, Shuna and Soai got back to town. Shuna was tired and needed to rest before she could use her magic to travel again. Soai could have gone ahead, but he waited for Shuna. Hakuro was busy cleaning up after the fight. He didn't mind the work, even though he couldn't use magic to make it easier. That night, Benimaru and the others came back. Benimaru left his team in charge on the battlefield and told everyone that Gabul was still there, making friends and helping clean up with Midray. Benimaru had a plan to let some prisoners from Eurazania stay in Tempest for a while. They would help out with different jobs. Geld and Alvis would help them settle in and start working. This would make things easier for everyone in Tempest. Rimuru listened to Benimaru's plans and was happy to see how much his friends had learned to do things on their own. A few nights later, Diablo came to Rimuru with a black box. It had proof of their peace deal with Farmus and some gold coins as part of the deal. Rimuru felt bad for forgetting about the talks but was amazed by how much gold was there. Diablo said they got most of it from Farmus's old king, Edmaris. Diablo had made sure Edmaris's brother, Edward, became the new king, thinking about future problems and friends they could make. Rimuru decided to use the gold for building up the city and helping Yom make a new country. Diablo thought they should send Rahim, who used to be a big church leader and was now their friend, to tell the Western Holy Church about what happened in Farmus. Rimuru liked the idea and wanted to send a message with Rahim to see what the church would say. They hadn't heard back yet, but Rimuru was okay with waiting. When the three lycanthropeers showed up, Rimuru noticed Gabble wasn't there. He had stayed to watch over the prisoners who could use magic. Rimuru was ready for the big group and had plans for them to help out in town. He even thought about starting a school to teach them all year long. When Gable did come, he brought a note from Milim. She wanted help teaching her people to cook. Gabble said one of the Dragon Faithful talked about how they don't usually cook their food. Rimuru decided to treat them well to show them a different way. He told Gabil to go back to his research and said they'd talk about a reward later. Gabble left, feeling good about his important job in Tempest. A lot was happening in town a month after the big meeting called Walpurgis. Rimuru saw Geld, who was really tired. Geld said he was having a hard time telling the new prisoners what to do because they were all so different. Rimuru felt bad for him because he remembered how tough his old office job was. To help Geld feel better, Rimuru took him out for a drink and listened to his problems. The next day, Rimuru talked to Hakuro, who had just given his job to someone else. Hakuro told Rimuru about some old elf ruins they found in Clayman's land, which was a big secret. Rimuru thought these ruins might be where Clayman got all his money from. Sometimes later, in the big hall, Rimuru sat in a chair made just for him and told everyone he was now a demon lord. Everyone was happy and clapped for him. Some, like Rigard, even cried. Xian was sure Rimuru would do great things, but Benimaru was worried about how Rimuru was now in charge of a huge area, even places far away across the Great Amald River. Kaijin said it was important because Rimuru could control the forest and stop people from taking things without permission. Shuna said if people didn't listen to Rimuru, they might be called rebels, so many would want his help. Gabble thought more visitors would come, like the lizardmen. Rimuru wanted to have a big party to show off the town and celebrate being a demon lord, and everyone liked the idea. They started planning the party right away, and Rimuru was excited to make it a day to remember. After the meeting, Rimuru said he'd work on the party details later and then heard updates from his team. He liked hearing from them, especially Diablo, who sometimes saw things differently. Rigard said that traders were coming back to town, probably because Fuz told them it was safe. Other countries were a bit worried about Rimuru being a demon lord, but nothing big had happened yet. The emperor of the sorceress dynasty, Elmesia El-Ruthalian, wanted to be friends with Tempest. So I told Rimuru about his work, like making a road to Thalion and meeting a group called the Tengu in the Kusha Mountains. So I thought they should ask Frey for advice about the Tengu, and Rimuru asked Benimaru to take care of it. They all joked around a bit, and Rimuru knew Benimaru would do a good job. Rimuru was worried about monsters near the town and the roads. So I said he fought a big bear called a saber grizzly and was okay. But Rimuru knew that bear was very dangerous. Gata didn't want new guards fighting such tough monsters, and Rimuru agreed. He told Sawai to be careful and not expect too much from the guards. Rimuru was happy to see Gata getting better at his job and said everyone should get training that fits them. They talked about how to keep people safe from new monsters. Vester had an idea to put magic shields over the roads, and Kaijin liked it. This could stop monster attacks and made Rimuru feel better. Then Kaijin and Vester made a machine that could do spells by itself. It was a big step up from what they did before. Rimuru was proud of their work, and they had help from Gable and Kurobe. The machine used magic from the air to make shields and clean up extra magic around. Rimuru thought it could be really useful. But then Veldora got too excited and wanted to use his own magic, which could be a disaster. Rimuru had to tell him to calm down. After hearing from Sawai and the others, Geld asked to speak. Rimuru let him talk. Geld wanted to tell other orcs about Rimuru becoming a demon lord and get more of them to join. Rimuru liked Geld's spirit but said new orcs should learn things in town first. Geld wanted to put them to work right away, but Rimuru said training was important for everyone, even the prisoners who could use magic. Rimuru gave Geld plans for a big building to make. Geld was nervous about messing up, but Rimuru told him it was okay to make mistakes and learn. When the meeting was over, Xian was a bit jealous of Geld, but Rimuru reminded her she had an important job too. Benimaru told Xian to keep Rimuru safe while he was gone. At the end of their meeting, Rimuru wanted to hear from Diablo. Diablo talked about things happening around the world, which were pretty much what Rigurd and Sawai had already said. He also brought up Yom, who was learning how to be a king with some help from Edmaris. Rimuru thought he should meet Edmaris soon. Diablo said they were getting ready for any trouble that might come up, and Rimuru was worried because Rahim hadn't come back from the Holy Church yet. Diablo told him they were keeping an eye on it. They all talked about how they might have some problems with the Western Holy Church. Benimaru thought they should try to fix things without fighting, and Shuna remembered they had been attacked before. She thought someone might be causing trouble on purpose. Rimuru guessed that Hinata, who was really loyal to Luminous, might have been tricked into attacking them. Rimuru and his advisors thought there might be more than one person causing problems, not just one big bad guy. They tried to figure out why different groups were doing what they were doing. Rimuru said they shouldn't jump to conclusions and asked everyone to find out more. They all had jobs to do, like checking on merchants who might be making money from the fights. Rimuru made sure everyone knew what they had to do. After the meeting, he thought about how even though he was now a demon lord, there were still a lot of problems to deal with. When Veldora, the storm dragon, came back to life, it scared people all over the world. The Western Holy Church said it was true, which made things even more chaotic because the demon lords had just formed a group called the Octagram. Countries were trying to figure out what to do, and the church was really worried. Archbishop Rahim stopped talking all of a sudden, and people thought maybe Tempest was going to attack. Hinata wanted to check it out, but she had to stay and protect the cathedral because of Veldora. This made people wonder who was really winning from all this trouble. Hinata wasn't ready to fight Veldora, and she might lose, but she also thought about attacking Tempest when Rimuru wasn't there. She needed to guess what Veldora and Rimuru would do next. For now though, both sides avoided any big problems. She was in a beautiful city called Lune, which had a magic barrier around it. She was walking to the big church there. The city was like a perfect place where everyone had a job and got along. But Hinata didn't feel right. She wanted to make a peaceful place like another city called Lubelius, where nobody fought or competed. But she had doubts, especially when she thought about how different Lubelius was from Inglesia. In Inglesia, kids liked to compete, but in Lubelius everyone just smiled calmly. Lubelius was run by the church and everyone was supposed to be equal, like in communism. But Hinata knew the god of Lubelius, Luminous, was actually a demon lord named Luminous Valentine, who was her enemy. Even though Lubelius wasn't perfect, it had been a model city for a long time, and Hinata wanted to make a peaceful world like that. In Lubelius, everyone was treated the same, kind of like animals taken care of by a farmer. Luminous and her family were vampires, but they didn't hurt people, they just needed a little blood. The city had strict rules to keep everything in order and make sure everyone was equal. Hinata believed in the church's ideas of fairness and justice, so she became a paladin. But she didn't agree with everything her teacher said or how the Free Guild did things, so she looked for her own way to get power. Hinata's whole world changed when she found out that the Holy Emperor, Louis, was a vampire working with another demon lord, Roy Valentine. She tried to stop them and got really hurt, But then Luminous Valentine saved her and gave her a chance to prove herself. Hinata used that chance and passed the test and became a powerful warrior, ready to keep order and justice, even if it meant going against Luminous. Hinata got to where she was going and met Louis, the Holy Emperor. He told her his brother Roy had died. Roy had run into someone bad the night before, and Hinata felt bad because she let that person get away. Louis was worried that Roy's death would make people lose faith, and they talked about the problems Rimuru could cause. Hinata had her own issues with Rimuru, but she knew they had to win the war against Tempest. They were waiting for Luminous to come back and knew they'd have to talk about things they never expected. Then Hinata went to a special place in the mountains called the Inner Cloister. She found Luminous there, who was upset about what happened the night before. Hinata told her about Roy's death, and Luminous was frustrated. Luminous said it wasn't Hinata's fault, even though Hinata was sorry for letting the bad person go. They talked about Veldora, the dragon that came back to life, and Rimuru, who was now a demon lord. Luminous told Hinata not to take Veldora lightly and was worried about Rimuru's power. Hinata promised to beat Veldora, but Luminous wasn't sure she could. They both knew Rimuru was a big threat and tried to figure out what to do about him. Hinata thought about her mistakes and how important Rimuru was. Luminous and Louis decided to watch and wait instead of doing something right away. Hinata agreed to help, even though she had some doubts. A month passed, and Hinata worked hard. She led her soldiers to build defenses against Veldora and collected information herself. Now, she was in charge of a big meeting with lubelius' two main groups, the Crusaders and the Master Rooks. Hinata was the strongest knight and sat in the most important seat. To her right were 6 Crusaders, each leading 20 paladins, and to her left were 33 Master Rooks, who were all strong on their own. They were called the 10 Great Saints and were known for their amazing powers. When Hinata walked in, the meeting started right away. Louis, the Holy Emperor, was watching the meeting from behind some blinds when Sar, who didn't like Hinata, started arguing. He blamed Hinata for not stopping Veldora from waking up and for a new demon lord appearing. Sar used to lead a group against Hinata, and now he was challenging her in front of everyone. Both the Crusaders and the Master Rooks had been working hard, looking into bad things that happened because of Hinata. Things got heated, with Sari's group going against Hinata's friends. Hinata stepped in and told Sar he'd be in big trouble if he kept this up. Sar knew Hinata was strong, so he stopped arguing, and the meeting could start. They talked about what they had learned, like how they were getting along with Rimuru's place and didn't know where Veldora was. She saw that the Paladins and the Temple Knights were different. The Paladins could tell the Temple Knights what to do, but both groups could travel around. Hinata knew she had to use both groups well to get what she wanted. Sar finished the meeting by saying there might be a civil war in Farmus with the new king, Edward. But in Bloomund, things were good because they were trading with Rimuru's nation. Sar thought Rimuru might be causing the trouble in Farmus. Hinata thought about it and noticed that Sar was still loyal, even though they didn't always agree. She also thought Glenda was acting sneaky and might have a secret plan. Hinata knew she had to keep everyone in line. Arnaud brought up a rumor that Rimuru was talking to Veldora, which made sense because Veldora seemed pretty chill. Hinata said she got messages from Luminous telling them to leave Rimuru alone. She told everyone to keep it a secret and not to mess with Rimuru, which surprised them. Sar didn't like the idea of just watching Rimuru, but Hinata reminded him that Rimuru was way stronger than any human, even the strongest ones. Hinata said they should be careful and maybe even try to talk to Rimuru. Some people were worried about this, but Hinata thought they might be able to fix things without fighting, even though everyone was tense. When someone knocked on the door during the meeting, Hinata thought it was Rahim and let him in. But it wasn't just Rahim. Cardinal Nicolaus and a group called the 7 Days Clergy came in too. Hinata didn't expect them because they usually stayed out of the spotlight. The 7 Days were known for being wise and training heroes, but Hinata was a bit upset with them for not doing their jobs before. Still, she stayed calm and said hello. Rahim told everyone about a scary fight with Rimuru, who was very powerful and had defeated many knights. Everyone got quiet, realizing Rimuru was a serious threat. But Hinata stuck to the plan from Luminous, which was not to fight. Even though some people weren't sure, Hinata was firm about following the orders. Rahim showed a message from Rimuru, challenging Hinata to a duel. This made everyone wonder what to do. Some wanted to fight Rimuru right away, but others said they should be careful. Hinata decided to accept the challenge, but Nicolaus and the 7 Days Clergy were worried. They gave her a strong weapon called the Dragon Buster, even though they might have had other reasons. Hinata listened to their advice but made up her own mind. After the clergy left, Hinata told the paladins not to worry and ended the meeting. The next morning, Hinata woke up to the smell of coffee. Nicolaus was making breakfast, which was nice of him because he was an important person in Lubelius. Hinata was grateful for the breakfast because she had a lot to do. While they ate, Nikolaus was worried about Hinata's big task, but she told him she'd be okay. She believed in herself and knew Luminous was guiding her. Hinata didn't know what would happen, but she started the day feeling hopeful and smiled for real for the first time in a while. In Celtroso, the 5 elders were having a big meeting about stuff that could really change things. They were in a safe room, talking about how Hinata found out they were tricking her, the problems with the Western Holy Church, and what the Empire wanted to do in the West. Granville Rozo, who was in charge of the Rozo family, was running the meeting. Damrata, who sold weapons, shared what he knew about the Empire's plans and how common guns were back home. Damrata mentioned that guns were everywhere in the East. Granville wanted to talk about joining forces with the Empire because they were all facing big threats. Glenda didn't like the idea at first, but Granville was the boss, so everyone ended up agreeing that they had to deal with Hinata because she was just too strong. While they were making plans, Granville talked about Damrata's secret connections to a group called Cerberus. They all decided to try and get Rimuru to handle Hinata so they could work on their own plans. They wanted to keep their power over the Western nations. When the meeting was over, Glenda was ready to do whatever it took to help the Rozo family get more power. Rimuru was feeling swamped with work after they finished the road to the Dwarven Kingdom. He had to plan another road to Thalion and build a city for Milim's folks too. Then Soka brought some worrying news: Hinata Sakaguchi was coming to see him. Rimuru dropped everything to find out more. Soka said Hinata was alone, but Toka later found out she had 4 strong paladins with her. Rimuru was trying to guess why Hinata was coming and if it meant trouble. At the same time, Diablo told him about Rahim dying and problems with the Holy Church getting worse. Rimuru called everyone together to talk about Hinata showing up. He left Geld out because Geld was busy with something else. Sowai told them how Hinata was coming with some tough crusaders, and it was hard to keep track of them. Rimuru liked how good Sowai was at gathering info, saying he was like a ninja. Then Diablo brought up the bad news about Rahim and the church. Shuna thought they should ask Adelman, who used to be with the church, for advice. Rimuru agreed, even though Adelman was a white with magic powers. Adelman came to the meeting right away, and Rimuru thought about giving him more important jobs. Adelman kept saying really nice things about Rimuru, which made everyone a bit uneasy. Shuna had to step in and get the talk back on track. Adelman, who used to be a big deal in the church, told them about how the church worked and its history. He said Lubelius was a place run by the church, and at first they just wanted to spread their beliefs without fighting. But then they made the temple knights to protect their people, and when they had trouble with other countries they created the Master Rooks, who were really loyal to the Holy Emperor. Adelman said things changed when the Crusaders got stronger under Hinata. He warned Rimuru about the 10 great saints who were really powerful and with the church. Adelman thought they should try talking to Hinata, but Rimuru wasn't so sure because it could get messy. Shion and Diablo liked the idea, but it just made Rimuru After worried. Adelman's departure, Rimuru had to figure out everyone's roles for the plan. He chose Veldora as a backup to check out the enemy's strength. Benimaru showed he could lead by setting up Yom's backup team. Rimuru was glad because Benimaru was doing better than Shion, who was a bit too proud. The backup included teams led by Gata, Benimaru, and Gable, with Hakuro in charge of all of them. Rimuru told Hakuro he'd have extra help if he needed it. Ranga went with Gabta, but Rimuru told him to be careful. Diablo was focused on finding out who really caused Rahim's trouble. Rimuru wasn't sure at first, but Diablo was so sure that Rimuru agreed to go ahead. Benimaru and Hakuro planned how to deal with the new king's soldiers, trying to avoid hurting too many people and making sure they had enough healing potions. Shion was sure they could do it, which made Rimuru feel a bit left out, but he still supported them. While they were talking about what to do with Hinata and her group, Sowai came in with news that 100 knights were heading their way. They thought the knights might be after Hinata. They didn't want to hurt the knights if they didn't have to, so they came up with a plan to keep them busy while they talked to Hinata. They thought about sending Team Reborn, led by Shion, to distract the knights. Rimuru agreed, but only if they couldn't settle things by talking. They got ready for a fight, hoping they could sort it out peacefully but ready to protect themselves if needed. Rimuru had to think about who could handle the 4 really strong paladins with Hinata. He thought Benimaru, Shion, or Sowai could do it. But then Raphael said there might be someone even stronger with the paladins, so they had to be extra careful. Rimuru decided Shion would keep an eye on the paladins and lead both teams. Sufia and Alvis from the 3 lycanthropeers wanted to fight too, and they promised to help Rimuru. With the team ready, Rimuru reminded them to look out for each other and stay sharp. Hinata and her team were heading to Tempest. They didn't have extra horses, so they moved slowly. They only brought the basics: a sleeping bag, some emergency food, and a pot. Along the way, 4 paladins joined Hinata, even though she told them they didn't have to. They insisted to coming along. They were surprised at how the road was this good. but there weren't many places to stay, so they often slept outside in the cold. After 10 days, they got to Blumund, tired and looking for a warm place to sleep. In Blumund, Hinata and her pals rented rooms and went to eat. The town was busy, even in winter, and had lots of different clothes and gear for sale. Some stuff looked like it was made from monster parts. There were many shops, which showed the town was doing well, probably because of Tempest. Hinata showed her friends how to eat ramen, a dish she remembered from before. They had trouble with the chopsticks and the hot soup, but they loved the taste. Hinata joked with them not to eat too much and get fat. The next day, they kept going, feeling better after resting. The road through the forest of Juro was really nice, better than the streets in Inglesia. There weren't any monsters and hobgoblin guards kept everyone safe. The hobgoblins told them about the road rules, like where to go and not to touch the magic stones that made barriers. Hinata's group was impressed by how well everything was organized. Hinata thought about what Yuki said about Rimuru building a nation where everyone could live together peacefully. They saw drinking fountains and inns along the way, which showed Rimuru cared about travelers. Hinata still had some worries, but she hoped she could work things out with Rimuru without any trouble. Back to the village, Hinata was coming towards Tempest with her pace. Sawai's team said she would get there by night. She had been on the road for 2 weeks and didn't use magic to go faster. Rimuru was glad to get this news early. Sawai, who was like a shadow, did a good job and wanted to use poison on Hinata, but Rimuru said no, thinking Hinata wanted to talk, not fight. They thought maybe Hinata was planning something else because she was acting brave. Benimaru wondered why Hinata had 100 paladins with her. Sawai noticed they were spreading out near the town and might fight Xian. Rimuru got ready to face Hinata. For Hinata, she left the inn and got ready for the day. They were going to reach Rimuru's city by night. She told everyone to be nice, but they were still nervous. Then, she got a magic message from Cardinal Nicolaus about a big danger called the 7 Days. Hinata was worried and tried to answer but couldn't. She talked to Holy Emperor Louis and found out that sending the 3 battle sages wasn't okay. Hinata felt she had to go back right away. She tried to use magic, but it didn't work. She felt something bad was going to happen and ran to a fight that was starting. Rimuru found out Hinata was trying to send a message and stopped it. He thought it would mess up her plans. Hinata rushed to the fight. Rimuru and his friends were ready for her. Benimaru said they would stick to their plan. Rimuru used his power to go to Xian fast. But when he got there, things were different than he thought. Team Reborn was fighting well against the Paladins. They were smart and didn't give up. Rimuru saw how good they were in a fight. Even Gobzo helped after Xian told him to. Rimuru and his friends were impressed by Team Reborn. But then Xian left quickly, and Rimuru wondered what she was going to do next. Hinata was quick as she moved through the woods, helped by the spirits. She came to a clearing and saw 5 strong magic users watching a fight. Her friends, the Paladins, were losing. Hinata felt sad that they couldn't make peace and knew a fight was coming. Rimuru watched everything without worry. He saw Hinata and her strong friends, including 2 scary Oni. Hinata knew these enemies were tough, especially the Oni with red hair. She got ready to fight Rimuru herself to protect her soldiers. Rimuru saw Hinata and they talked a bit. Rimuru said he was in charge here, but Hinata didn't care about what he said. Rimuru thought Hinata had done something bad to make them look guilty, but she didn't know what he was talking about. Rimuru wanted her to stop fighting, but Hinata wasn't sure because the fight might end soon. Then, one of the knights got mad at Rimuru, but Benimaru stopped the fight. After that, everyone started fighting one-on-one, leaving Rimuru and Hinata to face off. Renard was the vice captain of the Crusaders and was really good at magic and sword fighting. He wasn't a paladin, but everyone liked how he fought, especially when compared to Arnaud's rough style. Renard got better at fighting and magic because he looked up to Hinata, a strong fighter he saw in action once. He worked hard and became well known in Lubelius. But then, he heard rumors that Hinata might be working with bad guys like the Demon Lord Valentine and Rimuru. Renard trusted Hinata, but he decided to fight Rimuru to show that she was innocent because he was very loyal to her. When Renard went into the forest of Jura, he started to think maybe Hinata had really turned against their beliefs. He didn't feel any magic in the air, which made him doubt the story about the dragon Voldora coming back to life. Just as he was getting ready to cast a magic spell, monsters attacked him and his friend Guard. This made Renard worry even more about Hinata. He remembered the clergy's warning that Hinata might do something desperate, so he told his soldiers to fight back. Then, a strong Oni 9 Xian showed up and Renard knew they were in trouble. He told his team to protect themselves and tried to figure out how strong Xian was. Xian tried to scare them, but Renard was determined to fight and keep his faith. Xian saw that her threats didn't work, so she offered Renard a deal. Renard didn't want to talk, but Xian said she didn't want to hurt them, she just needed to show her power. Guard and the other paladins didn't trust her, but before they could do anything, Xian threw a rock at Guard really fast, hurting him a lot. Renard was surprised by how strong Xian was and agreed to listen to her. Xian challenged them to hit her with their best shot, and if she was still standing, they would have to give up. Renard wasn't sure what to do, but Guard wanted to fight. Even though Renard tried to stop him, Guard and the paladins attacked Xian. She handled their attack easily, and they were all amazed. Renard felt they had no choice but to surrender to Xian and hoped she would be fair to his soldiers. As Xian smiled big, Renard realized he had been tricked into this mess and felt bad for messing up Hinata's mission. Now, he could only watch as Hinata and Rimuru got ready to fight, knowing he had accidentally helped cause this big problem. Hinata was happy to meet Shizu, who was the only person she really connected with. She learned a lot about sword fighting from Shizu but left because she was afraid of being rejected. Hinata wanted a peaceful world, but she was sad about her past and what her mother would think. She thought coming to this world helped her mother and let her choose her own way without worrying about her past. Seeing paladins save kids from a big monster made Hinata want to be a paladin too. She wanted to use her power to make up for her past and keep people safe. 10 years later, Hinata knew her job was to protect people. As the leader of the Crusaders, Hinata got tired of fighting monsters all the time, even though she made it safer for her soldiers. She thought about why she worked with the demon Lord Valentine to keep peace. Now with a big problem with Rimuru, she knew she had to win and couldn't talk it out. When she tried to check Rimuru's power, she was shocked that he stopped her from taking his skills. This showed he was very strong, just like luminous Valentine. Hinata got ready with her special sword, moonlight, and armor, feeling determined to win and change her life. Rimuru was surprised Hinata wanted to fight even after he sent her a message. He saw that her sword was very powerful, and his own sword wasn't as good as he wanted, so he used his magic to make his sword stronger with a dark flame. When they started fighting, Rimuru had a hard time keeping up with Hinata's fast sword moves. They fought hard, but no one got hit. Rimuru was amazed by how precise and strong Hinata was. He remembered she didn't use all her strength before. Now Rimuru was ready to give his all in this big fight. Hinata watched Rimuru closely during their fight. She had trained for 10 years and hoped to beat him quickly, but he was just as good as she was. Hinata tried to use her mind to the fullest to understand Rimuru's moves and plan her next steps. But she hit a problem when she couldn't use her best skill, Usurper. Now she had to fight with just her sword skills. Even with a strong sword from Luminous, she couldn't hit Rimuru. He was too good at reading the air and moving his body to dodge her attacks. Hinata changed her plan, trying to be smarter and faster to win. Rimuru was in trouble. Hinata's sword moved faster and faster, and her fighting style kept changing. It was hard for him to keep up. Hinata knew what he was going to do before he did it, which made it tough for Rimuru. But then, he got help from Professor Raphael, who gave him a new skill to see Hinata's attacks before they happened. This helped Rimuru fight back better. Hinata felt something was wrong and decided to trust her gut. The fight with Rimuru was getting harder, and she saw how much he had improved. To win, she knew she had to use all her power and do a move she rarely used, called Melt Slash. She told Rimuru it was dangerous but promised he wouldn't get hurt too bad. Hinata was tired, and she knew she had to show Rimuru how strong she really was to make him give up. Hinata told Rimuru about her powerful final move, which made him wonder why she would warn him if she wanted to win. But when he saw she didn't want to hurt him, he was ready to fight. They had some trouble before, but now they were going to solve it by fighting. Rimuru remembered he had asked for a peaceful talk, but he knew Hinata was too stubborn for that. They got ready to fight, and Rimuru saw that his friends Benimaru and Xian had won their fights. Hinata looked around and saw her friends were okay and being treated well. This made her think she should have trusted Rimuru from the beginning. She felt excited and started to cast a big spell called Disintegration. It made her hand glow brightly. Then she put this power into her sword, Moonlight, getting ready for her special attack, Melt Slash. Hinata moved toward Rimuru, shining with light and energy. Her sword could beat evil. Rimuru could tell she was fast even though it didn't look like it. He knew he was in danger and asked Raphael for help. Raphael told him to use his best skill, Beelzebub, at the right time. The fight happened, and Rimuru was okay, but he lost a lot of his power. He heard Hinata laughing, but he felt weak, because his magic was cleaned out. They won, but there was still danger because of a big explosion coming. Hinata protected Rimuru from it, and he could only watch as she got hurt. In a secret room, Luminous Valentine, known as the Queen of Nightmares, looked at a casket with a girl inside. Even though it hurt her, Luminous touched the casket because she cared a lot about the girl. Louis came in and told her that Hinata was going to fight Rimuru. Luminous got ready to go help Hinata, with her servant Gunther helping her get dressed. She left the girl in the casket, said her name softly, and used magic to close the room in darkness. Damrata the Gold, who led a group called Cerberus, came back to Farmus after meeting some important leaders. He gave gifts to Earl Needle to keep his trust. He left his student, Edmaris, in Mygam because he thought there would be trouble between Edward and Yom. He spread stories that Yom was working with the old king, which made Edward send soldiers to Mygam. Damrata was worried that Hinata might find out what he was up to. He was supposed to start a war, but he stopped when he heard about a strong demon with Edmaris. Worried about staying safe, he decided to leave Farmus and gave Edward some demon hunters as a goodbye present. Damrata planned to meet Rimuru to talk about business. As he left, he thought about how he had just missed getting into trouble. Edward, the new king of Farmus, was happy when the nobles supported him, making his army stronger. He was surprised that Yom was working with his brother Edmaris and that Rimuru was helping Yom. Edward was worried his plans would fail. But then he heard that Hinata and her soldiers were going to fight Rimuru, which made him feel better. He let them go through his land and gave them power to fight. Edward didn't want to fight Rimuru himself, but he thought Hinata could win. When Earl Niddle asked for help, Edward saw a chance to send his soldiers without starting a big war. He didn't know this could lead to danger and told his army to get ready. Glenda had to change her battle plans, which is normal in fights. She was still sure she could win. Lots of countries and reporters were watching, showing this was important. Rimuru wasn't just watching Hinata, which Glenda thought was a mistake because it made his team spread out too much. Damrata left the country, but he left some demon fighting experts with King Edward, which made Glenda feel a little better. Still, she was worried things could get worse because the demon was still dangerous. Diablo laughed as he looked over the land, feeling like something bad was about to happen. He wanted to get back at those who made him look bad in front of Rimuru, his boss. Diablo had never been scared before, but now he was afraid of losing his job. He saw Edward, the new king, and others who might be tough to beat. Rimuru told Diablo not to hurt innocent people, but he could go after those who did wrong. Diablo told Hakura what he saw and got ready to grab Edward to use him in talks. When Diablo went towards Edward, the guards tried to protect the king. Diablo stayed cool because he knew he could get to Edward. They had a tense talk, and Edward, scared, told his soldiers to fight Diablo, which made things even tenser. Then he met some hunters who thought they could beat him. They had chains with holy power and a plan to catch him. But Diablo wasn't bothered by things like electricity, so their plan didn't work. The hunters were trained well and knew a lot about demons, but Diablo was too strong for them. When they realized they couldn't win, they started to lose hope. Even though the hunters had undergone rigorous training and conducted extensive research on demons, they were no match for Diablo's overwhelming strength. As they struggled to comprehend their failure, Diablo calmly explained his ability to evolve beyond their expectations, revealing the depth of his power and knowledge. Realizing the dire situation they were in, one hunter pleaded for mercy, willing to do anything to save his life. Amused by the hunter's desperate plea, Diablo allowed him to escape, signaling the end of their futile resistance. The other hunters, shaken by their encounter with Diablo, followed suit, abandoning their futile attempts to defeat him. Despite their best efforts and preparations, they were no match for the might of the demon before them. As the hunters retreated in defeat, Diablo remained poised and confident, his superiority unquestionable. His encounter with the hunters served as a stark reminder of his dominance and the insignificance of those who dared to oppose him. With a casual wave of his hand, Diablo dismissed the hunters, leaving them to ponder their failure and the overwhelming power they had faced. Sar stood in front of the tent, bravely facing the demon Diablo. Diablo talked to him, saying he was a high-ranking demon. Sar, part of the Imperial Guard, tried to stay calm even though he felt Diablo was looking down on him. He thought Diablo was just a normal demon and got ready to fight. But when Diablo showed how strong he really was, Sar got scared. He tried to fight, but it was no use, and his friend Glenda ran away. Sari was left alone, hoping his other friend Grigori would come help. Unfortunate for Grigori, he was dealing with a messy fight. Yom's fighters were battling the army from Farmus, which made Grigori's job harder. He was trying to find the demon who hurt Archbishop Rahim. Then, a magical beast named Ranga attacked Grigori with lightning. Grigori tried to get his group to fight back, but Ranga was too strong. Grigori got hurt, but Ranga stopped when Gaba and Gabel told him to go back to Rimuru. Grigori used healing potions to get better, but he was embarrassed and got a nickname later on. Sar was getting tired and knew he couldn't beat Diablo. He tried to use his skill to change his fighting style, but it didn't work. Diablo was way stronger and not even trying his hardest. Sar was losing hope when the 7 days clergy showed up to help. But suddenly, a huge fireball came and set everything on fire. Sar told everyone to run away from the flames. Hinata was hit hard and started coughing up blood. Her friend tried to help her with a potion, but magic didn't work on her. They needed holy magic, but the 7 days clergy showed up with bad intentions. They wanted to get rid of everyone to hide their secret. Just when things looked really bad, help came out of nowhere to fight the clergy. Rimuru used a skill called Absolute Defense to save himself. He asked his skill, Raphael, why it didn't work before. Raphael said sometimes spiritual stuff can get through the defense. Rimuru was upset, but Raphael promised to do better next time. Rimuru realized Raphael had learned from Hinata's sword to protect him better. They talked quickly, all in one moment. The clergy couldn't believe Rimuru was okay after their attack. Rimuru and his friends, Benimaru, Soai and Shion, got ready to fight back. Benimaru used black flames and Shion made threats. Soai watched quietly. Elvis and Sufia, who were like werewolves, kept the paladins from causing trouble. Just as Rimuru was about to end the fight, a gate opened, and Valentine, the demon lord, came out. The clergy knew her as the god Luminous and bowed down. Rimuru was shocked to find out Valentine's true power. Diablo was thrilled when Rimuru told him to handle the bad guys. He made a barrier to keep everyone safe. The clergy tried to beat Diablo with a big fire spell, but it didn't work. They tried their strongest spell, but Diablo talked to the reporters instead. He promised to keep them safe if they told the world he was innocent. They were agreed to write the truth. King Edward begged for his life, but Diablo didn't care. He made sure Yom would become king and Edward would lose. That's what Diablo offered in order to save Edward. And he agreed the proposal. Meanwhile, the clergy tried another spell, but Diablo trapped them in a fake world he controlled. They couldn't get out, and Diablo used his strongest move to finish them off. When Valentine, also known as Luminous, showed up, it was a surprise. Then Louis, the Holy Emperor, came and said Luminous was there. The clergy were scared and bowed down. Luminous didn't punish them, she healed Hinata instead. Rimuru was confused about how a demon lord used holy power and thought about it later. Hinata woke up and joked with Rimuru, who accidentally made her mad. Luminous also healed Renard, and everyone was happy. Diablo told Rimuru he did what he was asked. Meanwhile, Luminous was dealing with the clergy, so Rimuru didn't get involved and thought about making friends later. Luminous decided the clergy's fate quickly and without warning. Rimuru was taking Luminous, Louis, and Hinata back to town, thinking everything was okay now, but then Veldora showed up and recognized Luminous as the demon lord he fought before. Everyone was surprised and Luminous got mad. The paladins couldn't believe it, but Hinata and Louis stayed calm. Rimuru had to deal with Veldora's troublemaking again. They stopped Luminous from attacking Veldora, and it was another crazy moment for them. Gren from the 7 Days clergy was in a secret place, waiting for his friends to come back. They had a problem with their plan to get rid of Hinata, so Gren thought about what to do next. He wanted to blame everything on the demon and keep their power. But then, Cardinal Nicolaus found out what Gren was doing and stopped him because he was really loyal to Hinata. Granville Rosso was sitting in a warm room, thinking hard. He was upset about a close call he had with Cardinal Nicolaus. His plans didn't work, and he was waiting to hear from Glenda about their mission. When Glenda came in looking tired and beaten, she told Granville they couldn't beat their enemy. Granville was worried because this meant his plans were ruined. Later, he heard that King Edward had lost his power and Tempest was getting stronger. This was bad news for Granville. But his granddaughter Maribel told him they had to worry about the demon lord's money plans. Granville listened to Maribel and decided to make sure their family stayed powerful. Rimuru worked hard to fix things with Luminous and Hinata. They said sorry by promising to tell everyone they were not dangerous. They learned a lot about understanding each other. They also agreed not to fight with the Holy Empire of Lubelius. Rimuru had some trouble with Veldora, but he still thought they could keep the peace. They had to let go of their friendship with Veldora to make Luminous less angry. Rimuru thought this was part of growing up. Now they were waiting for Yom to become king and hoping to join the Western nations.
That's it for today, guys, and thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned for next chapter. Until then, goodbye.